Thomas had always prided himself on his predictable, stable life, but everything began to unravel one Wednesday evening. He came home earlier than usual, expecting the usual quiet routine with his wife, Evelyn. But as he stepped inside, something felt wrong. The house was quiet, too quiet, but then he heard it. Her voice, muffled but unmistakable, coming from upstairs. He paused, his heart skipping a beat, as he overheard her on the phone. "Yeah, babe, today was incredible. I loved every second of it." His mind raced. Evelyn had never spoken about work like this before. Panic bubbled in his chest. Was she having an affair? Was she hiding something? He stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, torn between confronting her or backing away and pretending he hadn't heard anything. But the sinking feeling in his stomach told him he had to know the truth. The door to their bedroom was slightly ajar. He could see Evelyn through the gap, but what he saw stopped him cold. She wasn't just talking on the phone, she was undressing, and there was a bruise on her side, one Thomas didn't recognize. Anxiety gripped him as his world suddenly felt like it was collapsing around him. Thomas was reeling from the unexpected discovery of Evelyn's strange behavior, and the sense of unease continued to grow. He tried to shake it off, convincing himself it was just a moment of paranoia, but something deep inside told him it wasn't. The bruise on her side was the key, the mark, the one she was so quick to cover up. It didn't make sense. Thomas tried to go about his evening, but the words he'd overheard echoed in his mind. Today was incredible. That couldn't be a normal conversation between a wife and her husband. Something wasn't right. The next morning, he left for work, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't focus on anything other than Evelyn's odd behavior. He knew that if he confronted her without evidence, she would lie, deny everything. So, he took matters into his own hands. He carefully observed her routine, documenting every detail, hoping for something that would give him the clarity he desperately needed. The sense of anxiety was suffocating. How long had this been going on? Was his marriage a lie? With every passing moment, Thomas's world became more uncertain. His need for the truth, undeniable and raw, burned through him as he prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably change everything. As Thomas sat in the dimly lit bar, the weight of the situation pressed down on him like a physical force. The glass of whiskey in front of him barely registered. His mind was elsewhere, replaying Evelyn's words, the bruise on her side, and the unsettling conversation he had overheard. His friend Daniel, who had been through similar heartache, sat across from him, watching him with an understanding that only someone who had faced betrayal could offer. Thomas knew Daniel's experience with deception, it was one that had almost ruined his own life. Yet here he was, offering a quiet form of solace. Thomas clung to his words, knowing that the truth was the only thing that could save him now. "You have to be sure," Daniel had warned him. "You need proof." But what Thomas had heard, what he had seen, was more than enough to tear his world apart. And still, the uncertainty lingered. Could Evelyn truly betray him like this? Could the woman he had spent years building a life with be living a secret existence right under his nose? The silence of the bar only deepened his sense of urgency. With every passing minute, the weight of what he was about to uncover felt heavier, more inescapable. The days that followed felt like a slow descent into chaos, a constant tug-of-war between the truth and the lies that had woven themselves into Thomas's life. Evelyn had once been the epitome of everything he had dreamed of, smart, beautiful and kind, but now her actions felt like a betrayal too deep to ignore. Thomas spent countless hours thinking about the conversations, the subtle clues that had led him to believe that something was off. But what hurt more than the revelation of Evelyn's affair was the realization that she had been keeping secrets from him for months, maybe even years. The once safe home he had shared with her now felt like a prison, each room a reminder of his own growing paranoia. The memory of the bruise on Evelyn's side haunted him, and the sight of her expression in the mirror, fraught with guilt and confusion, played over and over in his mind. He needed answers, undeniable proof that would give him the strength to confront her. He couldn't let this go without knowing the full truth. Victor, her lover, was an unknown force in this dark equation, and Thomas had to know how deep this betrayal ran. The truth was elusive, but Thomas felt his grip on the situation tightening, even if it threatened to rip his world apart. The more Thomas tried to push the truth from his mind, the more it crept back, gnawing at him with every passing moment. Evelyn's apology felt like a band-aid over a wound that ran far deeper than he had anticipated. She had asked for forgiveness, begging for another chance, yet the damage she had done couldn't be erased so easily. Each day felt like an emotional tug-of-war, where his love for her clashed with the gut-wrenching reality of what she had done. He found himself questioning everything: their years together, the trust he had placed in her, the memories they had created. Victor's presence loomed over their relationship like a shadow, a constant reminder of the lies that had festered beneath the surface. The words Evelyn spoke in that motel room, the ones filled with guilt and regret, echoed in his ears. It was hard to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the one who had betrayed him in the most intimate way. Every glance, every moment they shared now felt fraught with suspicion. Yet in the quiet of the night, when the weight of it all threatened to crush him, a small part of Thomas still clung to hope, wondering if they could rebuild what had been broken, or if he was only fooling himself. The tension in the house was palpable, and Thomas couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was terribly off. Evelyn's attempt to reconcile and rebuild their fractured relationship was met with his silent resistance. Every time he looked at her, he saw more than just the woman who had betrayed him. He saw the fractured trust, the lies, and the doubt that had crept in. He couldn't shake the memory of that night, the moments when Victor's presence had shaken the foundation of everything they had built. Evelyn had claimed she was sorry, that she wanted to make amends, but the truth was, the damage was done, and it wasn't as easy as simply forgiving and moving on. Thomas tried to focus on the good, the years they had spent together, the moments of happiness, but each time he tried, the weight of the betrayal pushed through. Was it even possible to move past something so deep, so intimate, or was he fooling himself, hoping for a reconciliation that would never come? As the days passed, he found himself looking at her differently, wondering if the woman he had loved had ever truly been who he thought she was, or if he had been blind all along. The silence between them grew heavier, and Thomas knew that time would tell whether their marriage could survive or if it was already doomed. As the days passed, Thomas found himself slipping further into a state of restless anxiety. He couldn't shake the image of Evelyn's tearful confession or the haunting words she'd spoken in the motel room. Despite her attempts to rebuild their relationship, the foundation of trust was shattered beyond repair. Every attempt at normalcy felt like an act, a fragile mask they both wore. But beneath it, he could feel the pressure building, the anxiety that would boil over if they didn't confront the truth. Victor's manipulation, the lies that Evelyn had so desperately tried to hide, clung to them like an unshakable shadow. The more Thomas tried to block out the memories, the more they forced their way to the surface. He couldn't even find solace in their shared spaces anymore. The bedroom, the kitchen, even the smallest interactions felt hollow and strained. He began to question his own sanity. Was he being too harsh, too unforgiving? Or was this his own version of self-preservation, protecting himself from the emotional destruction he knew would come if he fully allowed himself to trust her again? The anxiety consumed him, pushing him into a state of constant conflict, unsure of what to do next. He wanted to believe in their love again, but the truth left a scar that wouldn't fade. The quiet moments that Thomas and Evelyn shared after their confrontation were the hardest. Every night, when they would sit in the living room or have dinner together, a silent tension hovered between them, heavy and palpable. Thomas could see the effort Evelyn put into being the woman he once loved, but every word, every glance, felt like a distant echo of their former selves. Victor's influence still lingered in their lives like a toxic cloud, overshadowing their every interaction. Despite Evelyn's sincere attempts to rebuild their marriage, Thomas couldn't help but feel the weight of betrayal in the air. His trust, once unshakable, had crumbled, and no amount of apologies or heartfelt pleas could put it back together. What gnawed at him even more was the realization that he was losing himself in the process. He had become obsessed with Evelyn's every move, dissecting her words, her actions, and even her silences. The paranoia and anxiety ate at him, blurring the line between rational thought and emotional chaos. Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard they tried, the pieces of their broken relationship would never fit together the way they once did. There was no undoing the damage Victor had caused, and the fear of what might come next kept him on edge, unable to find peace. The days following Thomas's confrontation with Evelyn felt like a slow-motion descent into confusion. Despite her promises, the unresolved tension between them built like a storm, waiting for the right moment to burst. Each time Thomas looked at Evelyn, he saw more than the woman he loved. He saw the shadows of lies, of secrets buried too deep to ignore. Their once warm interactions felt hollow, wrapped in guilt and uncertainty. Evelyn's attempts to regain his trust were always met with his cautious silence, as he couldn't forget the way her voice quivered when she spoke of Victor. Thomas had tried to move past it, to rebuild the trust they had once shared, but the more he tried, the more the distance between them seemed to widen. Every time they had an argument, it felt like a small crack in their fragile foundation, threatening to shatter completely. And what hurt the most was that Thomas wasn't sure if it was him or Evelyn who was drifting further apart. What had started as a desperate attempt to fix their marriage now felt like a futile exercise, as he found himself torn between wanting to salvage their love and the suffocating weight of betrayal that constantly hung in the air. Thomas was stuck, lost between the past and the uncertain future. Thomas couldn't shake the nagging feeling that things would never be the same. As the days passed, Evelyn seemed genuinely committed to making amends, but her every action felt like a reminder of the trust she had broken. Despite her reassurances, Thomas couldn't rid himself of the doubt creeping in at every turn. Every gesture of kindness from Evelyn felt tainted, as though she was trying too hard to convince him that she was still the woman he had once known. Their home, once filled with laughter and ease, now felt eerily quiet. Thomas couldn't look at Evelyn without replaying her words, her guilt, her admission of the affair with Victor. The thought of what he had witnessed at the motel, the moments he had overheard, haunted him like a ghost, unwilling to let go. Though he tried to carry on, going through the motions of everyday life, the cracks in their marriage grew more pronounced. Thomas wasn't sure if he was waiting for some grand gesture from Evelyn, something that would show him she was truly remorseful. But as the days blurred together, he realized that no amount of effort from her could erase the hurt buried deep within him. He had tried everything to move forward, but the walls between them only seemed to rise higher. Thomas spent the following days lost in a haze of uncertainty. The distance between him and Evelyn felt like a canyon that grew wider with every passing hour. Despite her attempts to regain his trust, something inside him was broken beyond repair. He watched her with wary eyes, listening to every word she said, trying to decipher whether her apologies were sincere or just the remnants of a woman who wanted to salvage what she could. He couldn't stop the questions from swirling in his mind. How could she have betrayed him like this? How could he ever see her in the same light again? Even the smallest interactions now felt loaded with tension, as if they were two strangers trying to rebuild a life that had already been shattered. And then one night, Evelyn came to him, her eyes red from crying, her voice trembling as she asked for his forgiveness. It was raw, desperate, something that almost felt like an admission of defeat. For the first time, Thomas saw the depth of her regret, but it wasn't enough to erase the months of pain, the lies, and the betrayal. Still, he knew he couldn't continue like this. A decision had to be made, but the weight of it crushed him. How could he move forward when everything had fallen apart? Thomas couldn't shake the feeling of unease as he spent the next few days avoiding Evelyn. The silence between them felt like an impenetrable wall, each glance exchanged adding weight to his already burdened heart. The house that had once been filled with laughter now felt cold, every corner a reminder of what had happened. He couldn't stop replaying the events of that day in his mind, the image of Evelyn and Victor together, the words that rang in his ears, and the crushing weight of betrayal that had settled deep inside him. The lies she had told him, the things she had hidden, it was all too much to bear. Yet when he looked at Evelyn, he saw a woman who was lost, broken in a way he didn't fully understand. She had been his rock, his confidant, his partner. And now? She was a stranger. Every time she tried to speak, every attempt at reconciliation, he felt himself pulling further away. But deep down, Thomas knew that forgiveness wasn't something he could rush into, nor something he could do easily. Still, the question haunted him, could he ever love her the way he once did? Could this relationship be salvaged, or was it doomed from the start? Thomas stood at the crossroads, torn between the weight of his love for Evelyn and the undeniable truth that she had shattered his trust. As the days passed, the tension in the house grew, the silence louder than any argument. Every touch from her, every word she spoke, felt like an intrusion into the space he had built to protect himself from the devastation. He had seen Evelyn's sincerity, heard her tearful apologies, and yet, the shadow of Victor loomed over everything, poisoning the simple moments they used to share. One night, unable to sleep, Thomas sat at the kitchen table, the glow of the refrigerator light casting an eerie glow on his face. His mind raced with questions. Should he forgive her, try to move forward, or walk away and rebuild his life alone? He didn't know. His love for Evelyn was real, and part of him still longed to find a way back to what they once had. But the reality of what had transpired, of the deceit, of the lies, made it almost impossible to see a future where trust could be restored. And yet, deep down, Thomas understood that healing couldn't happen without facing the truth. There were no easy answers, no perfect solution. But if he was ever going to move forward, he would have to make the hardest decision of his life: forgive and rebuild, or leave it all behind. In today's fast-paced world, trust and communication are more important than ever in our relationships. Just like Thomas, we may find ourselves at a crossroads, facing betrayal or difficult decisions. The key is to face the truth, no matter how painful, and make choices that prioritize our emotional well-being. It's crucial to communicate openly with those we care about, address issues before they fester, and understand that healing takes time. Whether you choose to rebuild or move on, remember that seeking support, maintaining self-respect, and staying true to your values are the foundation for moving forward in any situation.